Welcome to Wii Vault. It's going to be a series on this channel where I take a look back at old Wii games, see what was good about them, if they hold up today, and if they should come back. Today's guest, Spider-Man: Edge of Time. I'm going to really regret going back and playing beloved games from my childhood in this series, aren't I? We're going to be looking at the story, the visuals, and the gameplay, and see if Spider-Man: Edge of Time is worth a replay. Spider-Man: Edge of Time is a game developed by Beenox and published by Activision. It was released to the PS3, the Xbox 360, obviously the Nintendo Wii, and also the 3DS. Very surprising that portable handheld got this game that was also on a PS3. Kind of weird to me. And this game is actually a direct sequel to Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, the first game made by Beenox. And this game follows two Spider-Men from that game, the Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and the Spider-Man of 2099, Miguel O'Hara. Two Spider-Men from the same timeline, just different points in it. This game is known for being a more plot-heavy Spider-Man game, especially compared to other Spider-Man games that came out around the same time. Swapping back and forth between the two Spider-Men and having an upgrade system to try to improve each Spider-Man and make them their own. Now, let's get into the specifics of the game. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. I'm going to start with the story since that is what this game is mostly remembered for. So what exactly is the story of Spider-Man: Edge of Time? The game starts off with this scientist from the future who's working at Alchemax called Walker Sloan, who goes back in time and founds Alchemax before it originally was and dismantles any competition he would have had and pretty much just makes a super corporation that controls everything. I think he went back around the 70s. I think this game is probably set around the same time in real life, so like 2010, 2011 for the game. It's affecting Peter Parker time, no longer working at the Daily Bugle, but instead working at Alchemax. And back in Miguel O'Hara's 2099 time, everything is run by Alchemax. Miguel originally tries to stop Sloan from going back in time, but is just a fraction too late. And he jumps in the portal and is grabbed by something preventing him from going back in time, and it's not actually really established what it was. And he just sees visions of Peter Parker dying by the hands of Anti-Venom, and then he's thrown back into his own time, seeing everything that's changed. And then he creates a link almost telepathically between him and Peter somehow through time with some crazy future technology and using a DNA sample that he says he got when they met last time. So sometime during Shattered Dimension, Miguel just took a DNA sample of Peter unknowingly and created this mental link. Miguel is trying to make Peter leave so he doesn't die. But at this time, Anti-Venom starts rampaging through the building, and Peter, being the hero he is not going to let anyone die. So he suits up and goes after Anti-Venom against Miguel's wishes. And this argument between Miguel and Peter is a big, consistent dialogue conflict that the two of them have between each other throughout the game. Miguel wanting to do what's best for the timeline and what's best for everyone, and Peter doing what Spider-Man does, and that's save people. Kind of a familiar argument that Miguel has, if anyone's seen any recent movies, and I'll get more into that later. And while Peter is making his way, trying to stop Anti-Venom, Sloan is making another time portal in present day to try to link back to 2099 so we can hop back and forth between the two times. And this causes a link between those two times, allowing each Spider-Man to do something that affects the other's time. Obviously, Peter's able to do a lot of things that affect Miguel's time, and I can't think of any specifics, but there was somehow Miguel affecting Peter's time through 2099. Doesn't really make a lot of sense that way. Obviously, Peter affecting Miguel's time makes a lot of sense. Miguel affecting Peter's, not as much. Anytime you have any questions about the science of how anything is working, Miguel just tells Peter, do you want a lecture on quantum physics? And that's how they explain anything away. They just say, hey, we don't have time to explain this, so we're just going to keep going along. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm kind of fine with it because sometimes you just want to have fun in a story, but other times it's like, okay, you don't have to do this type of explain away. Like, you could just have things happen and it just, hey, it's fun, it's a game. But when you do well, but why? And you're like, just because. within the own story itself, it does kind of throw things off a little bit for me, and I don't quite like it. But Peter does eventually make his way to the portal room, and that's where Anti-Venom is, and that's where he fights Anti-Venom, who in these cutscenes looks disgusting, like very spory, almost fungus on him. He fights Anti-Venom, and he pretty much dies. I can't remember if he exactly does die or he is near death, but either way, he's out of it, and Miguel thwips him through the portal. Miguel throws him in a pod to start healing himself up, and Miguel jumps into Peter's time to fight Anti-Venom. So now both Spider-Man are in each other's time. But Miguel fights Anti-Venom, ripping off all these like control inhibitors on him that Sloan had put on him. And once Miguel finally takes them all off, an enraged Anti-Venom starts going after Sloan, pushing him, Sloan, and Doc Ock, who is just kind of there working on the portal randomly, all into this time portal. And we'll get to what happened to them later. But Peter finally awakes in 2099 time, pretty much mostly healed, working to his way to the time portal. But since Anti-Venom pushed them all through, the time portal kind of broke, and each Spider-Man is stranded in each other's times. So now each Spider-Man has to work to fix the portal on each of their ends, both being attacked by random tentacles that look suspiciously like Doc Ock's. But have the coloring of Anti-Venom. Wonder what happened to him. But while each Spider-Man is working to fix the portal on their time, Miguel has to save Mary Jane at the request of Peter, and which is something Miguel very reluctantly does, not wanting to disrupt the timeline. But Peter and him have a very heavy argument that just sounds a little different, hits a little different after seeing Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh no.
What's wrong?
It's Mary Jane. She dies. Tonight. Right there at Alchemax.
How do you know? For shock's sake, Parker, what part of don't poke around in the archives was unclear?
Fine, I'm a nosy Parker, but now that I found out, it's
what? My job to save her? I've got enough to deal with.
You can't mean that. You can't just ignore that she's in danger.
Hey, I'm trying to focus on what's important.
What's important is not standing by and allowing someone to suffer or die because you do nothing. If you don't get that, then you don't get the first thing about being Spider-Man.
The plot of Across the Spider-Verse.
The future depends on...
My future is meaningless without her.
This is gonna be a huge mistake.
I owe you, Miguel. Big time.
Shocking right you do. But, well, maybe this will help even the score for everything the world owes you.
Thank you. I mean that.
So Miguel saves MJ while he's fixing the portal, and Peter ends up having to fight a Black Cat clone in 2099 time, who he almost kisses after begging Miguel to save MJ. Gotta pick one, man. But while in 2099, Peter realizes that he is the CEO of Alchemax and just immediately knows he's evil, even though nothing's actually been established to show that the CEO of Alchemax is evil. He just immediately knows he's evil. Maybe in 2099 comics, it'll be known, or in other media, it should be known that the CEO of Alchemax is evil. But just within this game, nothing's been shown to make you think that future Peter would be evil just because he's the CEO of Alchemax. But each Spider-Man fixes the portal on their side and jump through, swapping places. But Peter is being chased out of the portal room by this atrocity, this disgusting-looking being that looks an awfully like Anti-Venom, who Peter just names Atrocity because of how he looks. But with Atrocity coming out of that portal, there becomes to be a time storm in Peter's time that is risking the fabric of reality throughout the timeline. But Peter eventually gets some DNA samples of Atrocity that Miguel is able to analyze in the future, and it is a Anti-Venom, Walker Sloan, Doc Ock fused creature, which was pretty obvious based on everything that's happened. But yeah, just this fusion that looks disgusting with its big old belly bouncing around. And Miguel gets the idea that throwing it back into the time portal will stop the time storm. If you're asking why, the game just says, because. Like, really, Miguel is just like, do you want to lecture or do you want to do this? So we don't learn why or how. But back in 2099, Miguel learns that CEO Evil Peter wants to harness the quantum power from the time portal and be able to pretty much rewrite reality, wanting to save all the loved ones he's lost. And Miguel is not happy with that, wanting to play God, and thinks Peter has gone mad. Since Peter, one of the people he names wanting to save is Captain Stacy, and we all know how Miguel feels about a spider person saving a police captain. Not the biggest fan. So, in each time period's portal room, Peter fights Atrocity, and Miguel fights CEO Peter. I'll get into the boss fights during the gameplay section, so I won't comment on them right now. But obviously, the heroes each beat their villain, toss them into the time portal, and everything goes back to normal. Peter's back to working at the Daily Bugle, and Miguel's timeline is also fixed. And each kind of remembers both timelines, and it's not really explained why they don't go crazy. Miguel just says they're already crazy. Cool explanation, but that's the end of the game. So the story is really good on a first playthrough, I feel, but once you play through it again, it feels a little more disjointed, with, in the beginning, Walker Sloan being the villain, and then just randomly, out of nowhere, CEO Peter's the villain. He's given a motive later, but it comes out of nowhere, and it kind of feels like almost disconnected from everything. Like there's just two sections of this game that have similar stories, but different ones, and it just feels off. But the plot twist is decently set up. There's definitely a lot of good hints throughout it that make you question things, and once the reveal is finally shown, the reveal itself doesn't feel like it was like pulled out of nowhere, Peter being the CEO, but him being an evil CEO, that part is out of nowhere. So the story is, fun, but nothing too impactful. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Good plot twist, good first playthrough, but after, a second playthrough, it just feels pretty disconnected. Well, it's on the Wii. This whole series is about the Wii game, so I'm not talking about PS3 version of the game, Xbox version of the game, definitely not the 3DS version of the game. But it's the Wii, so this section's only ever really going to be about art direction and how games, if any game is kind of able to overcome system limitations and see what they are able to do with it. This game, in-game graphics, it's what you would expect on a Wii. Very pixelated, not necessarily hard to look at, but it's just very boring, usually. But the cutscenes still hold up, even on the Wii. These cutscenes actually look really good, I would say. And they really show the kind of grossness of Anti-Venom, and especially Atrocity, that you don't quite get. You kind of get a little bit of Atrocity, but you definitely didn't see Anti-Venom, how gross they are, until you see the cutscenes. And it definitely changes the dynamic of how you view those characters for the better. So when factoring in the in-game graphics, giving it a little bit of a pass for it being on the Wii, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10, being very much carried by the cutscenes. But the cutscenes, they really are really nice to look at. This one especially, the Anti-Venom in this game is like very memorable just based off the cutscenes. 7 out of 10 for the visuals. It is a very, very linear game. It almost feels kind of like an arcade game, just based because it's just very linear, like I said, and you're just fighting waves and waves of enemies until you get to the next point where plot progresses. So it honestly, in that regard, it definitely does feel very much like an arcade game, which sometimes is really cool. I'll get into why I don't quite like it for a Spider-Man game in a second. But since the game is mostly just fighting through those waves of enemies, combat needed to feel really good in this game, and it just didn't. What this game's combat mostly just turns into spamming two different buttons, your range attacks and your melee attacks. Each Spider-Man has different kind of attack abilities. Peter's close range is punches, and his long range are like these hard web swings of things. And Miguel's, his close range is clawing, and his range attack is just dashing to the enemy that's far away, closing the gap between them, and then clawing them again. When fighting as Miguel, usually I would forget which button I'm pressing, because you're just kind of clicking back and forth between two, because they visually looked very similar. There would be a blue streak to show that he's like lunging really fast, but man, not much of a difference between those two attacks. And this game, it has this upgrade system in it that I think doesn't do too much, but it does fit the game relatively well, having a shared category where each upgrade affects both Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man upgrade section, Spider-Man 29 upgrade section, so they each have their own unique abilities to make them feel different. And I would say fighting as each Spider-Man it feels like a little different, but not too much. Each one has their own dodge mechanic, with Peter having his spider sense where he's just dodging, everything really quickly. You see almost blurs of him. And then Miguel has a hollow decoy that he deploys, jumps back, does whatever. It doesn't honestly feel too much different because you would press each dot. Either way, you're pressing the dodge button and you're moving out of the way. Didn't do too much. Didn't do too much. So the upgrade system was fine, and it does try to add different attacks with like a down on the D-pad attack and a minus button attack. But I mean, it just didn't really change the flow of combat. It really was just button spamming, and it's just not that fun. There's also through upgrades, there's no alternative spider suits. Maybe you could probably say I'm just spoiled from the Insomniac game having different Spider-Man suits. But I'm playing through Shattered Dimensions right now, the game that came out before this one, made by the same company. There's alternate suits in that one. For 4 characters, this one just has 2, no alternative Spider-Man suits. A pretty big letdown. So upgrades, you can't upgrade suits. It really is just combat. And there's 2 different types of upgrades, like physical combat upgrades, and then like health bars, stamina bar type upgrades, each with its own different currency form. Blue energy for the combat upgrades, and golden spiders for the stamina and energy upgrades. Each just found around the world. Blue energy pretty much found everywhere. You get them for fighting enemies too. And golden spiders just in more hard to reach places across the map that you kind of have to find. Sometimes there's almost mini puzzles involved in just getting to the golden spider, which is nice. It is a little fun when you see one being like, okay, so how do I get to it? Or stumbling upon one, and it does feel a little rewarding. So that is a nice aspect of the game, finding the golden spiders. But it's not enough to carry the gameplay of this game. A big part of Spider-Man games is web shooting, slinging around. How does that feel? That's what most people want to hear when talking about a Spider-Man game. And I do not think, I will be so surprised if I find out a one worse than this one, at devaluing web swinging. This whole game, you're in an enclosed space. You're just in one building for each timeline. That's the same building, just one is a renovated version. And so the web slinging can only do so much when you're just swinging around a one-story room. Like you're in one room. Sometimes there's more open areas and you can swing a little bit more up, but it's usually just like one hallway you're swinging around, and it just doesn't feel like a Spider-Man game in that regard. I mean, when you want a Spider-Man game, you want to be able to swing around New York or swing around just any city and feel free. That's the thing I said about this game. Feeling like an arcade game is a negative for this game because it's a Spider-Man game. You don't want to feel like an arcade game just going very linear. You want to have that free movement, that free exploration, and you just do not have it at all in this game. Another way you traverse in this game, it's only for Miguel. Miguel actually had more unique traversal of the map than Peter did. Miguel had you would kind of just web crawl up this obstacle course with different turrets, different like barriers. Peter didn't have any of that. Miguel would dive down these elevator shafts and glide his way through. Peter had none of that. So there's more unique stuff for Miguel than Peter, and that's not good. But it ends up being better for Peter because I absolutely hate those traversal mechanics for Miguel. They're terrible. The one where you crawl up the wall and the obstacle, that one is fine at best. It's kind of boring, usually kind of slow. And you're just kind of dodging these little turrets. You web them up a little bit that I didn't realize you could do while climbing the wall, so I had a hard time moving through, but that was on me. But man, those elevator dives were the death of me, and that is what truly made me start hating this game. Spoiler for the final rating for the game, it's not going to be good. These elevator shafts dives made me start hating this game. The game, I don't know how fast it thought I could move Miguel. Not as fast as it think I could. I don't think it knew how much control I had over Miguel while diving down. I would slightly move the joystick, and he would fly. But slowly. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Because he would so barely move, but it would just be, it would be like, he's not moving, swinging through, but he's just moving too much for the slight movement of the joystick and missing all the little holes he has to perfectly dive into. Those sections were also far too long. They're so aggravating, and they just kept going on and on and on. And it just started to piss me off. Died multiple times in one elevator shaft, making me lose my mind. I guess the only other thing to talk about for gameplay are the boss fights. The boss fights, weirdly enough, just regress. They get worse each time. There's like four... kind of three, almost four main boss fights. There's the Anti-Venom one, there's the Black Cat, and then there's each CEO atrocity like final boss fight. They're kind of one because they're happening at the same time and you're swapping back and forth, which sounds cool. It's not, but you're swapping back and forth, so that's kind of like three, almost four, if you really count each one individually. But the Anti-Venom one is cool. The stakes are high. It's really set up. Fighting him is cool. There's nothing too gimmicky about the fight. You really are just, you're Spider-Man. You've been using these skill sets to get here. Fight Anti-Venom. Try to survive. And you don't, really, because you just take off his control chips and let him go at Sloan. And that's it. I mean, which sounds a little anticlimactic, but this guy is a beast. I mean, he's an absolute monster to fight. I mean, you're having to dodge around, you're hitting him, you're going into different areas in the building fighting him. It actually was pretty nice, and it's a steep fall off. The next one being the Black Cat fights, because you just fight her like 4 different times, and it's an annoying fight, which is just at some points it's just spamming a move. She'll have different clones with her to help her, and you're having to go around one big open area like a terrarium to go to different spots just to fight her again. You fight her 4 different times, and it's just kind of aggravating. But the aggravation within that fight does give some sense of, like, fulfillment once you finally beat her. You're like, oh, my God, fucking finally, I'm done with her. I can move on. There is a little bit of fulfillment in that. But those final game fights have so much weight on them because they're the end of the game. You spend however much time playing the game. They got to be rewarding. And these ones just weren't. They were so easy. Both of them are pretty much the same in terms of you're just either Spider-Man fighting either villain. You're swinging around. You're Peter, you're dodging atrocity. Miguel, you're fighting evil CEO Peter. Either way, you're swinging around while they unleash attack. You wait for them to finish unleashing the attack, and then you hit them. And that's it. And then you just throw them back into the portal, and that's the game. That's how the game ends. It's just the most simplistic, boring boss fight imaginable. And that ends the game. This gameplay, I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. It starts off somewhat fun, gets very repetitive very quick, and it gets very aggravating very quickly, especially playing as Miguel, diving through those elevators. Pisses me off right now. Like, I'm getting mad right now, reliving that experience of diving through those elevator shafts. Those elevator shafts had me like this. How? How? I'm maneuvering it down. And I'm fucked. Too many! That's too long! This is too long! Fuck. See, look, it has to be a memory thing. Oh my gosh. Not fun. I thought it'd be fun if we looked through the voice cast of this game and see who everyone is and see if there's any interesting actors in here that we didn't expect. Peter Parker is voiced by Josh Keaton, a lot of people's GOAT Spider-Man voice. Honestly, there's been a lot of really good Spider-Man voices, so there is a debate to different ones. Insomniac one has been doing great. Yuri But a lot of people, and probably to me still, this is the GOAT voice. Josh Keaton, returning from Shattered Dimensions, where he actually played Ultimate Spider-Man and not Amazing Spider-Man. He plays amazing in this one. He plays the Amazing Spider-Man in this one, and he's amazing in it. But he's also known for Spectacular Spider-Man, the best TV show adaptation of Spider-Man. There is honestly an increase of really good Spider-Man adaptations with the Spider-Verse movies, the Insomniac games, obviously Spectacular Spider-Verse, the Raimi movies. A lot of good adaptations out there. Spectacular Spider-Man, it's becoming more difficult because the Insomniac game was really good. The Spider-Verse movies are really good, but Spectacular Spider-Man is probably always going to have a very special place in my heart in terms of Spider-Man adaptations. Another interesting thing about Josh Keaton, he also plays in Young Justice, besides Power Rangers, maybe my favorite show of all time, a Spider-Man ripoff called Black Spider, where he's just like a villain assassin who's just as quippy as Peter. Kind of funny that he did that. And then Miguel O'Hara is voiced by Christopher Daniel Barnes, returning from Shattered Dimensions, where he didn't play Miguel, he played Noir. Each Spider-Man voice actor in this was in Shattered Dimensions playing a different Spider-Man. But he also had voiced Peter in the Spider-Man 90s cartoon. Both of these Spider-Men known for playing some cartoon Peters before this. Anti-Venom / Eddie Brock in this game is played by Steve Bloom, a very popular Wolverine voice actor, playing him in Fortnite as well as different Transformer projects, where he, in different Transformer projects, has played Starscream, actually. Black Cat is actually voiced by Katie Sackhoff, Battlestar Galactica fame, Bo-Katan, and is Poison Ivy in Marvel's rival DC's The Long Halloween movies. Pretty cool. And she does the Black Cat voice pretty well in this. Now, J. Jonah Jameson, who's in this game for like a second, is also voiced by the same guy who does Atrocity in this game, whose name I'm probably going to say wrong. Fred Tatasciore maybe. He voices Robin's Tool Belt in Teen Titans Go, as well as like various Family Guy and American Dad voices, and is Nikolai in Black Ops, which I thought was pretty cool. Mary Jane was voiced by Laura Vandervoot, who was Supergirl in Smallville. The villain Walker Sloan in this game was voiced by definitely the most accomplished actor in this cast, Val Kilmer, obviously known for being Batman, was Doc Holliday in Tombstone, and Iceman in Top Gun. So pretty iconic characters this man has played. It was very random to just see him voicing a kind of generic whatever villain in this Spider-Man game. And then Doc Ock, who is barely in this game, is voiced by Dave B. Mitchell, the voice of Knuckles from Sonic the Hedgehog, as well as Shocker in the Spider-Man PS4 game, which is pretty neat. And then credited as just voice, the voice actor in here who I am probably most familiar with out of anyone here, except for maybe this next one, Carrie Payton, the voice of Cyborg, Black Lightning, Aqualad, was Ezekiel in The Walking Dead, was Black Samson in Invincible. This is the guy I'm probably the most familiar with here, and I didn't recognize his voice at any point while playing this game. I had no moment of, wait a minute, is that Carrie Payton? And he's a voice I kind of hear, I kind of register pretty quickly just because of the amount of iconic characters he's played that are in shows that have absolutely shaped me. And finally, only credited as like Menace voice, the most accomplished voice actor on this whole cast, Tara Strong. Who is she voiced? OG Ben 10 when he was a kid. Timmy Turner, Dill Pickles, Bubbles, Hello Kitty, Raven, Tara in Young Justice. Crazy that she's in this as just a role I'm not even sure who that is. Just Menace voice. Absolutely not sure at all who that is. But that's all the major characters and notable voice actors in this. Definitely a much more accomplished cast than I was expecting, but I shouldn't be too surprised because one thing this game was good at was the voice acting. Definitely a very good cast, and it shows in the game. So, Spider-Man Edge of Time is a game with a decent story that gets kind of worse after additional playthroughs. whatever in-game graphics, but really stunning video game cutscenes with horrendous gameplay. I mean, truly some of the worst I've ever experienced while playing a game. Maybe that's hyperbolic. Probably not. I really hated playing this game. And because of that, I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. Not a good game. I mean, I value gameplay more than anything else. My favorite game of all time is Breath of the Wild, which, has really good art direction, a good story, but it's just, kind of, you got to really look for it. But it's the gameplay in that game that makes it the classic that it is. Tears of the Kingdom is following. I'm still playing through it, but following in its footsteps very well. Another favorite game of mine, Minecraft. Super blocky visuals. Pretty much no story. I know that they're starting to put a little more environmental storytelling in the game, but no story, pure gameplay. So I value gameplay probably more than anything else, and the gameplay in this was just god-awful, giving this game a 3 out of 10. I mean, you're Spider-Man. You should have fun web swinging, and the web swinging in this game might not as well be there. Web zipping, just zipping to a point, is way more important in this game than actually swinging through. Because it really is just about, moving on and progressing, not feeling the freedom of being Spider-Man. That is such an important part, and it's not in this game at all. Mind-blowing. I really did love this game as a kid, and I truly do regret replaying it. Because now I don't have that fun memory anymore. Because now when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I was dumbass as a kid. That wasn't fun. I don't even know if I actually finished the game. I probably didn't actually finish it as a kid. If I had to guess, the Miguel scenes, I bet I couldn't beat them as a kid. Honest to God. But I'm not sure. Really bad long-term memory. If you disagree with me, it's because you haven't replayed it recently. If you're sitting there like, no, that game's fun, no, the story's great, you're remembering it nostalgically. If you really want to re-experience it, do it. Go through, replay it again. You're not going to have a good time. And you could say it's because I'm on the Wii. I refuse to believe those Miguel dive scenes are good on any console. Because I really was just using the joystick. It's not like, I'm having to use motion controls to do it. No. I'm just using the joystick. There's joysticks for every version of this game. It's not good. It's not good. The storyline, we all remember it fondly because of a nice twist. And it was just cool to see two Spider-Men interacting. You go through, replay it again, really pay attention to the story. It's not going to hold up as much as you would like. It's still a fine story, especially for a video game. But it's not what you remember. It's not what you remember. This game is not what you remember if you disagree. And before I actually sign off, I want to rank each game in this series. This is the first true entry in the series. I do actually have 2 videos, one where I look back at Wii Sports and one where I look back at 2 Ben 10 Wii games that are almost like precursors to this series, so I'm going to include them in the rankings. I'm going to rank them all. Number 1 is Wii Sports. Number 2 is Ben 10 Alien Force Vilgax Attacks. Number 3, Ben 10 Alien Force, and this game is coming in at dead last. Number 4, Spider-Man Edge of Time, and I think the longer this series go through, just the lower and lower it's going to get, the higher that number is going to be. Tell me in the comments if you disagree, or what you liked about the video, what you disliked about the video, what I could improve on, any other games you want me to do. The next game I plan on doing in this series is actually the game that came out before this, Shattered Dimensions. I've been playing it on stream. I hope to have it finished by the time this video comes out. So now I just have to ask, what game should I do next? Web of Shadows? Or should I play some Bakugan games? I have Bakugan Battle Brawlers and Bakugan Defenders of the Core that I plan on doing. Let me know in the comments below what you think I should do. And any other feedback. I will listen and read every single comment down there because I don't get comments. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I got more content coming out. Going to keep doing the Wii Vault on this channel while streaming the games, but I do have other video ideas outside of it. So I've got a lot of things coming out, things I'm really excited about, so please stick around to see them. And thank you for watching, and keep gaming.